the inside story on the issues that affect you and your community. This is Local 12 Newsmakers.
Cincinnati is a fabulous town, but just like every city, it's got its bad neighborhoods.
I'm always on alert because you never know what's going to happen.
The fact that your senses are heightened is what keeps you alive out here.
A year ago, the TLC network aired The Police Women of Cincinnati. Long before it was cool to be a woman police officer, Cindy Combs was there, opening doors and creating opportunities. Now she's preparing to retire. Good morning and welcome to Local 12 Newsmakers. I'm Dan Hurley. In the past 32 years, Cindy Combs has worked her way up through the ranks of the Cincinnati Police Department. Currently, she is an assistant chief in the Cincinnati Department and the president of the Hamilton County Police Association. This week, she will retire from the force. I am joined this morning by Lieutenant Colonel Cindy Combs of the Cincinnati Police Department. Welcome to Newsmakers and congratulations.
Thank you.
Yeah, we're taping on Friday, so exactly a week from now will be your last official day. Is that right?
Exactly, Friday the 13th. Very apropos.
Yeah, okay. We know each other a bit, and I know that you're outgoing, you're confident. 32 years ago, when you joined the police force, did you think of yourself as a pioneer, as a trailblazer, that you were going to push the envelope here?
Fortunately for me, there was a woman that came before me named Phyllis Caskey, who did a lot of that for me. It was still very different. Women in Cincinnati had only been in uniform since 1974, but they were all laid off in '76. When my class got hired in 1980, there were 12 of us and probably only 3 women on the street at that time. Phyllis was one. But it was made very clear to us at the beginning in the academy that we were different and not necessarily greatly appreciated or wanted.
Well, you're mentioning Phyllis Caskey. Was she a mentor, in effect?
Yes, in a lot of ways, very much so. She actually was hired as a policewoman when they basically were hired to be relegated to taking care of juveniles and women issues. And she signed up to take a promotional exam and basically got tossed out into uniform without having a lot of training. And was basically sent out to be made an example of, to send a message that maybe being on the street wasn't really where women belong. So she broke the ranks all the way to captain. I just happened to be the first one that made assistant chief, so she's a great mentor.
When you started, did you imagine yourself, I'm going to be a police officer on the street, doing the sort of thing we think of, or did you imagine yourself, I really have the ambition to move as far up in the ranks and move into administration someday?
Oh, no. The last thing on my mind was sitting behind a desk doing stuff like I do now, like looking at budget spreadsheets and contracts for computer equipment. No, I wanted to be out there on the street every day because my whole thought process in getting into law enforcement was, when something really, really bad happens in your life, who do you think to call? And that was way before Ghostbusters, so it was police. And, I kind of wanted to be out there and helping people in the community, and that was my dream from 4th grade.
Well, we were talking about a woman who was able to be, almost by accident, a mentor. Resistance by many people, but were there men who were also your mentors? Oh,
very much so. There's no way I would have ever survived in this profession if it weren't for some very, very awesome male mentors. From the very beginning, coming on this job, now retired Lieutenant Colonel Jeff Butler Sr., he saw, I guess, that I had this energy and drive, and, he helped focus me in getting me into some, pretty cool assignments, doing some undercover work and things like that. People in my recruit class, when it got very difficult some days to be in that academy class, there were people that basically were like, come on. And a lot of times when it got very, very difficult in my career, those were the people that kept me focused and said, you never planned that this was going to be easy. But they were the people that continued to encourage me and make sure that tenacity, stubbornness didn't go away.
And have you tried to consciously play that role for others, either men or women?
Oh, very much so. Very much so. It started, let's go all the way back to just coaching kids in soccer. You got to have good role models and people that, you feel comfortable coming to as a kid, and so I think that's where our future lies. But so many bright, young, talented people, and it's very easy to get frustrated when you work in, I mean, we see a lot of negativity out there. We see all the bad stuff that happens in life. It's very easy to let that get you down. And so, a lot of times I'm that cheerleader. I'm that person back there, calling somebody and going, hey, I saw what you did today. Really great job. People that have worked for me, I've tried to get them into, various training programs. If they're studying for promotion, I try and work with them. The Y has this slogan that, she lifts as she climbs. And very much so, I take that to heart.
Mm-hmm. I just want to say to people, by the way, your voice isn't always this way. You're fighting some allergies.
Fighting some allergies. And, in retirement, I was looking at those 1-900 jobs. I'm sorry.
All right, well, we won't go there. In the course of your career, what was your favorite? Was there a favorite assignment, sort of a favorite point when you were, I don't know, at a particular area that you were working on that you just said, oh man, this is good. This is what I was made for?
Really, truly, it's going to sound kind of weird, but I really enjoyed when I was doing a lot with the community. In particular, I really was kind of our first person to do public information officer. And there was a lot of good things going on in the police department, but if it doesn't bleed, it doesn't lead. And so,
because you were dealing with people like us all the time, right?
Exactly. I want the talking head and the gore in the background. But, I wanted to talk about the positive things that we were doing. I worked a lot with the community members. When we went to community-oriented policing, being involved in helping to reorganize, simple things like Over the Rhine was served by 3 different police districts. And
really?
Oh, yeah. And so if I lived on one side of Liberty and Vine, I was in District 4. On the other side, I was in District 5. And south of there, I was in District 1. Now, as a community in Cincinnati, a community of 30 or 52 specific neighborhoods, how do you get anything accomplished when you have to deal with 3 different entities if you want to look at a long-term problem solution? So even just doing things like helping redesign that and trying to get our computer dispatch system, realigned to do that, and working with the communities to get them introduced to their neighborhood liaison officer, because we're the conduit to city government. You're there 24/7. I don't care if that street light gets shot out at 10 o'clock at night, 11 o'clock at night. They're not going to call traffic and engineering, Hey, that street light's been out, And so for me, actually getting to do a lot of work with community building, and that's not, most cops would tell you, hey, we didn't come here to be social workers, but you're not going to solve problems by being an occupying force. You need the community.
Well, in fact, we've seen a lot of that shift over the last decade. I mean, to be perfectly honest, since the riots of 2001 and the consent decree, how has policing changed in your mind? Is that the key thing? Is this community outreach, this community relationship? But what's changed about policing in your 32 years?
A lot of things. We were the professional policing model. It was very much, there was a philosophy that crimes were solved by responding quickly and getting on the scene. There was this whole thing of being systemically unsystematic in your patrol methods. And we pretty much, with the radio in the car, we isolated police officers from the community. And it was all about get there fast. If you get there really fast, you'll get the bad guy. And you isolated yourself. And you get much more information on what's going on a daily basis by just getting out and talking to people. So from that standpoint, that whole model of policing across the country has changed. You need to work with the community, and you need community buy-in and input. And we can't arrest our way out of crime. You need to look at underlying factors. You know, we talk about things. I'm very proud of one of the programs we put together, which was the Neighborhood Enhancement Program. You know, you need to work in conjunction with other entities. Even in our own city, we didn't do that. If you're going to impact crime, you got to impact safety, and you got to impact perception of safety. And perception of safety, a lot of times, is based on things that have nothing to do with crime, but they have to do with disorder and blight. If it doesn't look, if the place looks kind of scary, then I'm much less likely to go in there if I'm a good person. I'm much more likely to feel safe there if I'm a bad person. And then if I'm a good person in that area, the best way to stay safe is just to keep the blinders on and not talk to anybody. So I think the whole idea of addressing blight, crime, underlying social issues is going to make the difference much more than let's get there quick and lock up the bad guy, especially when you don't have jail space.
Flip side of that question, how's crime changed in 32 years?
Oh, tremendously. I think there's a lot less respect for human life these days. Funny story, when I first came on, when I went to a new district, I made a run one night for a burglary in progress at Anderson Place Elementary School at the time. Big school, sits at the corner of Madison and Duck Creek. Mm-hmm. And all the guys had just gotten out of roll call, and they sat back in a coffee hole hoping that I would get hurt to send a message to the rest of the women that we didn't belong there. I had two very good male mentors who did back me up when I came on the air and said I'd found a burglar in the school. As the one guy pulled up in the back, one of the burglars in the school actually ran up to the window, put his hands and face against the window and said, "I give up." Well, I'm thinking he's the only burglar, right? So I'm much thinner then, much more an athlete. I climb through the window because I don't want to look like I'm afraid. I'm taking stupid chances, things you should never do. But I climb through the window. My buddy Jim watches the guy on the outside. Mike Gardner, he's up in the front of the building watching the front. I'm in the building, I'm handcuffing this guy, and I hear someone come down the hall towards me. And I scream and I yell those things that you hear on the cop shows on TV, trying to be big and strong and intimidate this guy. And the first words out of his mouth were, "Oh my God, it's a woman, please don't shoot me." So in a way, even in society back then, even the bad guys thought that the women were gonna go, "Oh, weaker sex. She's just going to shoot me." So, in a way, that worked to our benefit.
Yeah.
You know, now there's no respect.
Yeah. Very short, I'm almost out of time. What's next for you?
Well, you know, we say retire. For me, it's refresh, refocus. I am going to take some time off and enjoy the summer. I haven't had one off since I was 12 and could first babysit for Kyle Hill, one of your buddies. I'm involved in a lot of volunteer projects, as you know. So I'm going to do that, but I want to look at doing some consulting, working with communities, working in the nonprofit field, the stuff that was all wide open for women back when I was doing this other thing. And, you know, I think I want to try and build more relationships and partnerships.
Thank you very much for being here this morning.
Thanks.
Thank you for everything you've done for this community in the last 32 years. And I know whatever's next is going to be just as important.
Thanks.
So
Thanks,
you.
Dan.
Stay tuned. After the break, I will be joined by a Cincinnati documentary maker who went halfway around the world to understand the immediate implications of global warming.
Here in Kiribati, we believe that there's a recipe, a secret formula, and a secret recipe for human peace and human happiness. To us, we see happiness as a product of being able to be part of a community, of a collection of people.
Kiribati is a nation of 33 coral atolls, the rims of ancient volcanoes. and rises only a few feet above the sea.
It is on the islands of this tiny country, half a world away from Cincinnati, that all the theoretical future implications of global warming are transformed into immediate reality. Welcome back. Here in the United States, we debate the reality of global warming, the role of human action in creating the phenomenon, and what policies should be adopted to address the issues that are raised. But for most Americans, especially those of us in the middle of the country, it can seem all pretty theoretical. It is anything but theoretical for the 32-island nation of Kiribati in the South Pacific. Last month, the president of Kiribati announced that he is seeking to purchase a piece of land, perhaps in Fiji, New Zealand, or Australia, so that he will be able to move his 103,000 citizens away from their ancestral homes before they disappear beneath the waves. I am joined this morning by Andrea Torrice, a local documentary filmmaker who explored the dangers facing the citizens of Kiribati a decade ago in Rising Waters. Ms. Torrice lives in Clifton. She is also the producer of the acclaimed New Metropolis series, which included Crack in the Pavement, focusing on the challenge of first suburbs through the lens of Elmwood Place and Madeira. Welcome back.
Thank you.
This is great.
Great to see you
Even
again.
though you did this, it was released 10, 12 years ago?
It was released in 2001 on PBS.
Okay.
Yes.
And we're 2000. Okay, so that means you were working on it even a year before that.
Yes. 1999, I went out with a team of tropical climatologists out to the island nation.
So then, the whole documentary is set up to say, here's a place where you can see global warming's impact long before you can see them anyplace else. On the other hand, are you surprised that the nation has gotten to where it is, that with this announcement last month that it was actually looking for land already? Has this happened faster than you expected?
Yes, it has happened faster because back in 1999 when I was out filming, all the scientific predictions were that these kind of events that they're experiencing now were going to happen in 20, 30, or 50 years. So I was very disheartened to hear that they were already starting to look for, to start to plan. And I know also that they are building seawalls, they are importing dirt, they are actually getting boats of dirt because a lot of people don't want to leave their home.
One of the things we ought to make clear here, that there aren't high places on any of these islands, right? Most, 6 feet above sea level?
Well, it's, about 10 feet. Kiribasa's highest point is 10 feet. And it really is a very beautiful place in the middle of nowhere. And when you go there, it takes about 2 days from here to get there. And you look down on the ocean and you're amazed when you see that there is this beautiful island and these cultures that have survived tremendous adversity for about 2,000 to 3,000 years with their own language and culture.
There's a passage in the documentary where the immediate impact of rising waters can be seen not only as a moving line in the sand, but also in the faces and words of the nation's leaders. Let's take a listen.
Islands can erode from natural causes, but in recent years, Kiribati Islanders have reported strange high tides, rogue waves, the loss of small islands, and storms more powerful than those of the past.
I've lived here since the 60s, and there used to be a tree here, right in front of my house. In the 70s, the high water mark used to be here. The tree was lost along with the beach that used to be here. We moved our house inland there, and the water keeps coming up to the house during the high tides now, and so we built this seawall 2 years ago. If the tide continues to wash away our land, we will have to move to the other side of the road to higher ground.
We continue to try and carry on life as usual and create things on the island and encourage our people to move forward, but we're not too sure. There's no point in creating a lot of infrastructure on an island that will disappear in the next 50 or 100 years.
That was the voice of the president we saw there at the end. I find that juxtaposition very. Here's the woman who said, I had to move back to here. We built this wall, and now it's the water, and we may have to move across the road. But the president's looking ahead, and he said, can we invest is there any reason to invest here? He's looking farther out. I mean, very difficult situation.
Yes, and it's like many developing countries. Kiribati, the main problem that they're experiencing now is the saltwater intrusion into their fresh water supply. So not only are they seeing a slight sea level rise, but the salt water, the fresh water lens is underground, is becoming salty. And while there are desalinization techniques, it requires a lot of energy, which the island doesn't have. So they don't have a lot of opportunities.
Just so I'm clear, Kiribati, is that the main, there are 32 islands, right? Are there people, how many people live on how many of those islands?
All right, Tarawa is the main island, and that is where I filmed most of the, it's like the main island. And then there are small islands scattered around. And there are people that live on these islands. Not all of them, some of them can't sustain. The main issue, again, is water, fresh water.
Okay. So, given that situation, what can be done? I mean, what can the world do? Because this is just an example. This is just the canary in the cave, literally. What can the world do about this?
Well, I think that what Kiribati represents is a real warning cry to the world that we need to take action to curb greenhouse gas emissions and to step back out of the political arena and look at the scientific issues. And while there may be some questions about what the impacts are going to be, the thing, I've been following this issue for 15 years, Dan. I've worked with lots of different scientists from NOAA and NASA. And the one thing that I am concerned about is that when I started looking at this work in '97, all of the predictions were, they had like a range, best and worst case scenario. Now, and they were like 1 to 2 inches of sea level rise. Now, 10 years ago, what were the worst scenarios are now the best scenarios. So everything has gotten worse. While the science is better, while the computer modeling is better, the concerns about the weather extremes has all now gotten worse. So we need to do something. We need policies and practices, and that will start to address this global problem, because it will affect us eventually.
Yeah, our seacoast areas and Manhattan, Florida, wherever. But the other sort of, I ask you about, did this all occur quicker in terms of the crisis for this little nation? And you said yes, than you expected. The flip side of that is, when you were doing this documentary, I think there was still hope that the Kyoto Accords, and the United States never approved those.
No,
we never took action.
Right. So, yeah, and it's sad because, again, watching both the international debate, what I've seen is that it has become more political and less relying on concrete facts. And that's really unfortunate because people's lives are at stake. People, not just Kiribati, but everywhere. And unfortunately, the media has also played a role in confusing the science about, is it going to be, are we going to have more tornadoes? Well, one model does show that this area will have more extreme weather events. Right. And so people grab onto that, and yet then they also have to present various things. The rest of the world realize this is a problem. And I suggest that we look at it like a military threat, almost like terrorism. If we, while we don't know everything, we don't know where the terrorists are, we do know some things, can we be prepared? And that's what I'm concerned about. We're not prepared.
Well, we're just scratching the surface. So I want to make sure people know how to find you and find more about this documentary in case they want to get it. If you'd like to learn more, you can go to www.torriceproductions.com, and that's the website, and you can get in contact and you can find out a lot more about this and see another clip too of this particular documentary. Also see some clips from your other documentaries. Thank you very much for being here. Thank you for making Newsmakers a part of your Sunday morning. Next week, on the 100th anniversary of Japan's gift of cherry trees to the people of the United States, I will be joined by representatives of 2 local Japanese businesses and the former Governor Bob Taft, whose great-grandfather blocked out for this. At the end, I'm going to plug all their events that the Japan American Society is going to
the May 3rd dinner and all that. I'll be down for that.
And
Yeah.
their sumo. They really
Oh, they're doing a sumo event too, aren't they?
Yeah.
When is that? God, that's going to be something.
April 22nd. And